Hey there, I'm Roger Mittag. I'm the host of the Style Sessions, and I'm also the founder of Prud'homme Beer Certification, one of the best beer certifications you're ever going to find around the world. We're online in classrooms, and if you want a little bit more information, check us out at tfkbeer.com. And also, if you're loving these sessions, make sure you like us, you comment, and you let other people know that we're on YouTube and we're running these great information sessions about beer. So today we've got a really unique style called an Eisbock, and so I think without further ado, I'm just going to pour this beer. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it, and then we'll get into a little bit of the history as well. So first of all, Eisbocks are typically wheat versions of Bock beers, and Bock beers typically, if we go back into history, first time we heard the term Bock beer was from this town called Einbeck back into the 1300s. And Bocks are always historically strong beers in Germany, anywhere from 5.6 up, but Eisbocks are a little bit different. And there's wheat versions of these as well. So the beer that we're featuring today is Schneider. It's called Aventinus Eisbock, and it is at 12% ABV. So I'm going to do a few things first before I pour it. First of all, I know that it's re-fermented and there's some sediment in here, so I'm just going to very slowly twist it because I want to get all of it into this glass so that we can have a good look at it, smell it, and taste it. So I'm just dropping the yeast off the floor of the glass, getting it up into suspension so that we can appreciate all the flavors that it has. Now, as I've said in the past, if you're doing something like this, there's a very good likelihood that it could come out rather quickly. So you should have a glass handy. And a couple times that I've done this, I think with the Saisons, it just blew up all over the place. So despite my best wishes. Anyway, here we go. So I'm going to pour a little slower because there's lots of CO2 in here. The other thing, this is a high alcohol beer. The foam is going to dissipate rather quickly. So I got everything in there, and that's great. So the glass I'm using today is called a sensoric, and it's a little bit like a stemless wine glass, except it's really nicely tapered up in the top, and then it flares back out again. The reason I'm using this is I want the breadth of the glass and the body to open up all the malt profiles in this particular beer and to tighten up the foam at the top and tighten the aromas out so I can smell them. Really interesting looking beer. It's really hard to tell on camera, but it's got a reddish brown hue to it, almost mahogany and chestnut in color. The foam, it ranged anywhere. Yesterday I poured it and it had this toffee ring around the outside, but more of a coffee cream color on the top. Bubbles are pretty big, but then I expect that with high alcohol beers, and they tend to dissipate rather quickly. This is a really interesting beer because there's a lot of things going on in this beer. Normally when we have a wheat beer from Germany, we can expect things like bananas and cloves. Now the bananas in this particular beer don't smell like fresh bananas. They smell like overripe bananas or even a flambé banana. The cloves are really minimal in this, and really what dominates, the very first smell that I got yesterday when I was trying this beer, just to make sure that I was on track, was the smell of port wine. It's got this beautiful, strong aromatic that really brings out all the prunes, dates, raisins in there. And then after you get by those first couple of aromatics, what you're going to then find is some licorice. That little bit of clove is hanging in there, but there's not a lot else on the nose. I think if you let this thing really open up, it starts flaring, and then you can start seeing exactly what it's all about. As with any re-fermented beer, this really sparkles. It's really lively and dances on the tip of your tongue. It doesn't finish very quickly. It actually takes quite a bit of time to empty out of your mouth, so it's more of a medium to long finish. Aftertaste is considerably longer than it has been on most other beers that we do, but there's no bitterness in this beer. So the aftertaste is primarily a little bit of clove, a little bit of licorice, and then you get this boozy fruitcake kind of characteristic. Flavor-wise, a lot of the same things that you're smelling. So dominates for me on the flavor with prunes, licorice, then the dates, and the raisins come in afterward. That boozy fruitcake that you get around the holiday season is something that I find is very present in this particular beer. It is very warming, and this is a beer that you should tread lightly with. So this is a beer that you definitely want to have after dinner, maybe just by itself, and just sip and savor it. It's something that would go great during a nice cold winter's night. Great for a movie, something that you're just sitting, you're not in a hurry to get rid of. This is about enjoying life a little bit. So a little bit of the history on Eisbocks. So first of all, go back. First mention of the term Bock beer came from a town called Einbeck, which is in the northwestern part of Germany, a little south of Berlin. And Einbeck brewers were very adept at brewing high alcohol beers. And then gradually, as these beers made their way down to Bavaria, the word Einbeck got dropped and became Bock beer. And Bocks are synonymous with rams as well. It's the same word in German for rams. And typically these beers, we find normal Bock beers, or Urbocks, come out during the springtime, and that's when the rams come down. This particular beer, either a Doppelbock or an Eisbock, are not usually released until the fall and going into winter, because we know that they're celebration beers. As with many things about beer styles, we can't pinpoint exactly how this style came, but there are lots of stories. And the story that is most repeated goes to a town called Kulmbach in Bavaria. And in the 1800s, and again, we're not 100% sure of exact dates on this, but in the 1800s, it is rumored that a Doppelbock was left outside and froze. And then when it was brought back inside, what they realized was they skimmed the ice off the top of the beer, and they ended up with something that was much higher alcohol and more concentrated. So the whole technique of ice brewing is really about freezing the beer to allow the water crystals to form, and so that you skim those off. And what it then does is intensifies the alcohol content. So it is something that, you know, we see from time to time. And I think that if you really wanted to get a true Eisbock, it's really got to come from Germany. At any rate. Doppelbocks are normally somewhere in the 7 to 8% range, and they're always wheat beers. So you tend to get the same kind of characteristics, and then you just get a little bit more of the booziness on this particular glass. So hope you enjoyed this session on Eisbocks. Next session, we're gonna dig into North American styles, and we're gonna start off with an iconic style called the American Pale Ale. And I hope to see you then. So hope you've enjoyed your time with us. And we're coming to an end of these style sessions. So I'm kind of hoping that if you're enjoying it, or if you've got any thoughts or suggestions on where we should continue with it, please send them my way. You can post them on YouTube in the comments section. So having said that, I look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.